put some of these examples up now. But this is fundamentally the top, the main things that could happen. You can get customers can have extreme aggravation. Does anybody relate to that lady? Getting really annoyed. Yeah? Oh, don't tell me that you've just got perfect. Whenever you call people, you have perfect customer service and everything just works.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Is anybody here from STC? Okay. I won't go there then. trying to renew my phone because we're being recorded. I'll tell you after. But I have got a equivalent of Saudi national ID. I'll tell you. So you can get frustrated, damage to reputation. That little quote is quite good. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to destroy it. So if you thought about that, you do things differently. We've got, with social media and Twitter. Are you all tweeting at the moment? Make sure you get tweeting. I want to see hundreds of tweets at the end of this. People tell their friends and they tell them about bad stuff a lot more than they tell them about good stuff. There we go. That was a good one. Loss of efficiency, loss of money, etc. The increased risk, and there even are examples where poor data has led to loss of life. And I know several examples. Not hundreds, but I know of at least 10 examples where poor data has actually led to a loss of life incident. So it's that serious. Okay. This is quite good. Professor Joe Peppard, a male, Joe, not Josephine, Joe the man, from the European School of Management in Cranfield in the UK. He had this quote, data errors can cost a company millions of dollars, alienate customers and suppliers and business partners, and make implementing new strategies difficult or even impossible. The very existence of an organization can be threatened by poor data. Okay? And that's absolutely true. And this one, this is a friend of mine, Ken Orr. So he said, ultimately, poor data quality is like driving with dirt on the windscreen. So you get slowly degrading vision. You must have seen this, like if you're in the sandstorm or if you're in the UK when it's snowing and there's ice on the screen, and the vision gets worse and worse and worse and a bit worse, and you quite often scrape that little bit and look through the screen. Yeah, we've all done this. So at some point, you've either got to stop and clear the windscreen or risk everything smashing into a tree. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is what is happening with our businesses right now. I think people are driving, their data quality. It's getting worse. But we haven't had a disaster. Why do we need to do this? What's the cost of doing that data quality? We haven't had a big disaster yet. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen some of our business colleagues saying that kind of thing, but there's going to be a point where the business drives into the tree, as far as data is concerned. Does this make sense? Am I speaking too fast? I'll come back in a sec. Okay, speed-wise? Yes? I can. Okay, so the question is poor data quality where it was a loss of life incident. Let me just see what I will. I'm just seeing which ones I've got in here. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't have the specific one in here. So one. In the United Kingdom, a large electricity and gas company, and this is public fact, so because I'm being recorded, I'm not going to say some of the others for clients and companies that I've worked in, but this is public. There was a young boy who was killed through walking on an exposed pipe that went across a river, and he fell, and they were doing it as a dare, and then fell into actually a canal. But the data that the company held, that had been inspected and it had been looked at for the putting up signs and for putting up barriers for what's called exposed pipe work, the data said that the pipe was underground and that it did not need to have a barrier put up and it did not to have signs put up. And so in that particular case, they received very, very large fines. Now clearly, in that particular case, the boy walking across was the ultimate reason. But had the right data been there would have been prevention barriers to stop them climbing up and climbing across. There was, secondly, for the same organisation, in probably about 4 years ago, a house in Scotland, a place called Lark Hall in Scotland, a house blew up and 4 people in the family were killed. And it was just before Christmas as well, just before the big holidays. And it was a gas leak that had, and it was an old metal pipe. They call them cast iron pipes, okay? And it had fractured and gas leaked, and all of the data showed that it was the new polythene, or polypropylene actually, polythene pipes, and consequently the pipes in that area did not need to be inspected because the data says it's safe. Okay? I can, when we're not recording, I can tell you of some others. Okay? And for obvious reasons, I'm not going to speak. Is that okay? Good. No problem. There's some surveys, and I'm sure we can all equate to this. I'm not going to read that. Some customer expectations about data. You know as well as I do that you receive poor service when you get poor data. Okay. So do we all know this guy? Yeah. Mr. Clarkson. What could possibly go wrong? That's his saying. Okay. So what could possibly go wrong? Here's an example, a very simple one. This is called the Mars Climate Orbiter. Does anybody know this story? No? Okay. Mars Climate Orbiter, it was launched December 1998. There is the actual satellite. That's the proper picture as well. A lot of people don't show the correct rocket. It was to go up to Mars and to orbit, and you see the little satellite. Tell them I'm busy. The little satellite would come out the top. There's the satellite, and then orbit around Mars. When it got to Mars and it came out, these little manoeuvring thrusters, they're just tiny, very tiny manoeuvring thrusters. They fired, and instead of it going around Mars like this, when it came out, they fired, and it went, and it bounced off the atmosphere, and it broke into bazillion pieces when it bounced off the atmosphere. This cost huge amounts of money. We're talking about tens of billions, okay? What do you think happened? Well, there was a very simple... Oh, there it is doing an orbit, okay? Right. So this is what the report said. It unintentionally deorbited. That's American speak. In English, we say crashed. Okay? And what had happened, basically, and you can see that there were data, it was to do with the force of firing the little jets. One of the subcontractors had used imperial units, or they said American units, which is pounds seconds, so it's force times time. One of them had used metric units, which should have been Newton seconds, and it's about 4.7 times the difference, so it fired all wrong. And they found out pretty quickly. So this was a really simple data error that cost tens of billions of dollars plus thousands of man-years of work. Okay, so not as serious as loss of life, but kind of big, big money. Here's another quite simple one. Here's a couple in the UK. They received their gas bill, and their gas bill, you can just about see it down here, but we zoom in. There's their gas bill, and this was for a quarter, for 3 months of gas. Okay, it should only be like £100, £200, something like this. So there were some data errors there. It got worse because after the gas company, there they are talking to the press. It's all over the newspaper and the television. So the gas company go, oops, mistake. I'll tell you what, we will wipe out your bill. So obviously that's wrong. But for this, 3 months, you get free gas. So your bill is £0. 2 months later, they received a summons to go to court because they had not paid their £0 invoice. So the system had put it down to 0, but then it's marked as not paid. Therefore, it's a debt, and therefore debt collection comes in. So can you imagine the publicity around that and the loss of reputation? Okay. So that's, it's amusing. Nobody got hurt, but so there's that kind of thing. Do you know this one? Because some of you might have heard me talk before, seen some of my seminars and webinars. Has anybody flown on an aeroplane? Yeah, I guess everybody has. Fly-by-wire aircraft. So this is a Boeing 767. So fly-by-wire. It's like most modern cars now, by the way, is that there's not a cable that connects the controls to the wing surfaces. So on a fly-by-wire aircraft, it's an electrical signal. It goes down bits of fibre optic, and then there's a tiny little motor, servo motors, that make the flaps go up and down, and the rudder and the elevators. This particular plane, it ran out of fuel, and it totally ran out of fuel. I mean, completely, 100% ran out of fuel in the middle of the air. Not only that, when an aircraft runs out of fuel, there's normally some reserves for the little thing at the back. Have you ever noticed the tiny little jet at the back? Really tiny little one at the tail, here. This is called the auxiliary power unit, the APU. That's the generator. That's the thing that makes the electricity. What happens if you've got no electricity and it's a fly-by-wire aeroplane? To send an electrical signal from the control surface, from the joystick to the control surface. You've had it. So this thing literally ran out of fuel in the middle of the air for lots of reasons. And fortunately, have I got it? Yeah. So fortunately, the pilot was a gliding expert, and also he knew of a strip that was previously a military landing strip, and so he was able to glide this aircraft in. What they didn't know was that these brand new fly-by-wire aircraft had a thing called a ram air turbine, which is a little fan that dropped like a windmill, that drops down out of the nose or the side of the aircraft, and it spins to generate just enough electricity to control the surfaces. This had never ever been put into the simulators. It is now. So what had happened? There was various things that had happened. The calculation of the fuel mass, because aircraft are loaded by weight of fuel, not by volume, because volume changes with temperature. So the calculation of the fuel mass was wrong. The setting of the fuel gauges was wrong. The cockpit warning system, they didn't know what all engines out, actually what the sound was. So they were going, what is that noise? It's called a long bong. It's bong, that kind of thing. And they didn't know that these things, the ram air turbines, would deploy. So in this case, nobody got hurt. Lots of people had a very big scare. Nobody got hurt, but it could have been very, very, very much worse. So there's a data issue. And the last one that I want to talk about is a very simple one, which is the UK police forces. So the police forces in the UK back in 2011, so it's not that long ago, they were asked, the police officers were asked when they record a crime to say what city the crime was in. And the whole reason was for crime statistics between the different police authorities and the different counties in the UK. So you said you were in Swansea, right? So just over this way, in South Wales. So I live, that's where I live, right there, okay, in Bath. So you would say what city the crime was in. So all those cars that you stole and those places you broke into, it would say Swansea. Maybe, okay. And if it was me, it would say Bath. Then they said, well, actually, rather than writing, in text, put the postcode. But in Britain, the full postcode is really, really detailed. It goes down to almost in an individual house or just a couple of houses. So they said, we'll only use the first bit of the postcode because the software that the policemen were filling things in on, it insisted on a full postcode. We're only going to use the first bit of the postcode because all we need is the city. So as a bit of a joke, some people said, here's the postcode of the police station. That's fine because it's Swansea Police Station or it's Bath Police Station. One of them in a city called Preston, they put the postcode of one of the police officers' sister. She lived in the city. They put the postcode. That's fine to say it's this city. However, a bit later, the government of the day had a thing called the Open Data Initiative, the Government Open Data Initiative, where certain government data sets are made available to the public. And that data included something that was listed as UK crimes by postcode. Now, anybody in the UK will tell you the postcode is the full thing. So people then got hold of this data and said, oh, because it says postcode, and they didn't know, they didn't know the full story. They didn't know, the metadata, the accuracy, the granularity of it. They did things like this. They produced a crime mapping website, okay? And in this case, it says the Preston Street branded the most crime-ridden in the UK. And it was the address of that lady, the sister of that police officer, okay? Because there's hundreds of crimes in this street, according to that mapping website, whereas in reality, that's the crimes for the whole of the city. But it got worse, okay? If you think that's bad, it got worse because insurance companies now looked at it and said, you live in a really bad area, so your household insurance premium is going to go up 500%. And it got worse than that because it said, for some people, your house, because I know you've got a really cool palace, yeah? Yeah, because they told me he's got a cool palace, yeah? But it's not worth $20 million anymore. No, because the mapping database says you're in a bad area. So the real estate agent said your palace is now only worth $1 million. Okay? So these things started to happen because people were looking at crimes by postcode, whereas in reality, it was actually crimes by city. But the data said, or the definition said, crimes by postcode. So what's the point? What's the point with all that? Oh, we'll come back to this. The point with this, where's my slide? Come on, up, we'll get to it. I've obviously put too many. Yes, here we go. So how good does data quality need to be? Okay. Is anybody a consultant? Anyone here do consultancy? I'm going to tell you, yeah. Okay, so stand up next to me, and we're going to practice the big thing that consultants do. Okay, so when I say how good does it have to be, because we're practice consultants, we go, it depends. Okay, you see, he's a professional consultant, yeah? So do you want to be a consultant as well? Ready? It depends. Okay, there you go. That's all you have to do. And that's the point is, look, there we go. It depends. So we take that last example. So in the context of creating these statistics for showing crimes across the United Kingdom, that data was fit for purpose. Yeah? But in the context of all those other things, insurance company, real estate, detailed map, it's not fit for purpose. And this, my friends, is the biggest, if you're going to just think, if you're going to remember one thing from this is the one thing to remember. Data quality, the big thing about data quality is fit for purpose. Okay? It then gives kind of a bit of a challenge because in the first example, we knew what the purpose was. We knew we were collecting it, and it's at a level of detail, and it's just being used for aggregated crime statistics across the country. But then it got picked up, and it got used for some other stuff, and it got used for some other stuff, and it got used for some other stuff. Does this sound familiar in your businesses? The data that was captured for one purpose then gets used for other purposes. And broadly speaking, you've got to be, you've got to be an extra special kind of idiot to get it wrong for the first use. But unless you go in with your eyes open, it's quite easy to get it wrong for the second use and the third use and the fourth use. Yeah? And that's why we have to create things called data quality metrics or data quality indicators. So in that example, if the insurance company or the real estate agents had actually known that it was not by postcode, it was crimes by city, if they had been able to go in with their eyes open, if they had had some metrics, if they had had some metadata telling them that it was really crimes by city, they would not have used it for that purpose. Yeah? So seriously, this is the biggest takeaway of the evening. I'm not saying go away now because we've still got some more time, but that's the biggest takeaway is you've got to have data that's fit for purpose. And if you don't know the purpose, then you give indicators, metrics, measures. You give something so that the subsequent users can go in with their eyes open and they can make an informed decision as to whether they want to use it for that new purpose. Do we all get it? Do you all understand that? Because that is, seriously, the rest is fun now. I mean, if it wasn't so much fun already, it's even more fun. Okay? So let's just take a little pause because I just want to see. I've got lots of material. I know, I've got material here for 3 hours, and I'm just cherry picking the bits that we're going to go through. So talk amongst yourselves. Oh yes, there we go. Right. Yeah. So it actually was the next slide anyway. So one of the things that very frequently you see is a problem, sorry, a very common phenomena that people just go and fix the data and they think that's job done. So this rubbish graph is meant to show on the x-axis it's time, and on the y-axis it's number of data errors. So I'm showing a linear progression there. There's quite a lot of evidence to show that there's actually an exponential thing, but I couldn't draw an exponential curve by hand, so I made it linear. So we've got some data problems, and we identify what those problems are. Maybe people have put wrong gender codes in, or they've allocated wrong product code. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll write some SQL, we'll analyze this, and we'll fix the data. Yeah? Does anybody do this? Anybody at all do this kind of thing? I'm not going to pick on you. You think I am? Yeah. So that's very common, isn't it? We look and we go, oh, we need to change it from this code to this code. So we go in and we fix the data. All right? And then if we do nothing else, then what happens? It gets worse. So we'll go in and we'll fix the data. And you get that. And then we'll go and fix the data. And you get this kind of thing. They call it the sawtooth. So nothing is sustainable. You've fixed the data, but it's not sustainable. Does anybody do this with their car? Yeah? Yeah, you fix that little thing in the car, and it goes wrong again, and it goes... I've shamed him. We see this a lot. Or at home. Do you actually really replace the washer on the leaking tap, or do you just turn it tighter? Okay? So you know what I'm saying. So what we really want to do is we want to go and do something called root cause analysis. Have we heard that phrase before? Root cause analysis? Yeah, and I'm going to show you root cause analysis in a moment. So we want to do root cause analysis to get to the real cause of the problem, then fix it. And we want to put some data governance in place to make sure that that kind of thing never happens again. So you could get a pattern going a bit like that. Now, it's never going to get to zero, because theoretically, it's not going to get to zero. But you can make these changes, these improvements, you can make them sustainable, you can make them enduring. You've got a chance of being able to not keep repeating all those problems.